all you beautiful people of the internet, and Jason.
Hello.
Hope you're all doing amazing as always. That was a lot harder than it needed to be. Doing a BF today, and we're going to show you how to go through and do a bunch of stuff that's common on these, including diff bushes, blade bushes, tail shaft center bearing, tail shaft donut. What else we got over there? Bump stops, a few other things. So let's just show you what's going on and how you fault find these things to start with. So basically we're throwing the catalog at this thing for things that are common with. Starting in the middle of the car, we have tail shaft center bearing. This thing is completely flogged out. You can see there is a big gap above the center bearing. You should not be able to see daylight in it. And if you grab the thing and give it a shake, completely flogged out. Looking at the tail shaft donut, it is full of cracks. Let's go sort of about there. So tail shaft donut is also stuffed on this thing. It has really bad vibration above 60k an hour, and it's also clunking and knocking in the rear end. Moving over to the rear end, I'll just give the camera to Jason. We need to do rose joints or spherical joints on this thing. So normally if you grab the wheel at about 11 and 5, you get that knock. And up in here, there is a spherical rose joint, which we need to replace. We're going to do them on both sides. We need to put bump stops in it because they are pretty much non-existent. Looking at the blade arms, so this is the blade arm here. Up in here, there is a bush. I've touched on this before in other videos. This arm is supposed to go through the center of the bush. This thing is touching the bottom. So when you sort of accelerate, put it in gear, that's hitting. Let's grab my pry bar here. I'll show you another way that you can sort of tell. So if I sort of just pry against it, don't mean to pry, but you can also, I can't really see it, but they're quite cracked and there's a lot of movement in it. And then lastly is diff bushes. So you've got one diff bush here, you've got another one up in there, and then you've got your main one on the back of the cradle. So if you pry on this thing, you can see how much movement there is in the diff. So yeah, that's not great. And you can also get that banging as well from the diff moving around. So we're basically going to be doing everything on this. We've already done a whole bunch of work on this car, including a major service. We've done a transmission service and flush, and we've also put some new front upper arms in it because the upper inner bushes were stuffed and there was also play in the ball joints. But I thought I'd give you a look, see how we go about doing all of this stuff. So yeah, let's just get into it. We'll start by getting the wheels off, and I'll show you how we go about getting the K-frame out the back of these things. So the K-frame is the whole rear end of the car. So you need to remove that to do the diff bushes on these things. I've heard of a couple of people say that they can do them in car, but I'm not keen to try. The K-frames on these come out pretty easily once you know what you're doing. We've got the back wheels off, and we're going to start by pulling the tail shaft out. I do recommend marking the tail shaft before you remove it, as I've done. You have 6 8mm bolts on the tail shaft there. You can I normally get on these with a 3/8 rattle gun just by spinning the shaft. Then you've got 2 10mm on the center bearing going up into the floor. And then you can slip the tail shaft straight out the back of the auto, but we're not going to do that because we need to change this donut anyway. We're actually just going to unbolt the donut from the flange here. So we'll do that with those 3 bolts. So we'll get on to pulling the tail shaft out. Also, we need to do a handbrake adjustment on this as the handbrake goes through the roof. Handbrake adjusters are inside here, so you basically pop that cap off, and there's, I think it's around here somewhere, there's a little roller wheel. So we'll back the handbrake off to start with. Backing the handbrake off makes it a little bit easier to undo the handbrake cables, which we need to undo as far as getting the K-frame out. So we'll start with that stuff, and then we'll move on to more. So I got the handbrake backed off through the holes on both sides. Jason's just working on taking the tail shaft out. I forgot to mention before as well, one of the reasons why we're backing the handbrake off is because we need to remove this disc, because one of these studs is completely stripped and like we can't get a nut on it, and I think it's that one. So we need to change that stud anyway. So yeah, we're backing them off to get that disc off as well. Once Jason gets the tail shaft out, one thing I forgot to do before we drop the car down is we actually need to pull the back seat out, because you've got this ABS sensor wiring here, which goes up through the floor, and there's a plug just under the back seat. Some people remove the ABS sensor altogether, which is up there in the middle of the screen. The light's currently on it. Sometimes they get stuck in the knuckles, sometimes they don't, and then you can back feed it out. I just think it's easier just to pull the carpet out, pull the back seat out and undo it. Jeez, you can really see how split those blade bushes are. Anyway, so yeah, once Jace gets the shaft out, watch your head. How do you watch your own head? Anyways, yeah, we'll drop it down and get those sensors out. So I've just dropped it down a bit and popped the back seat up. This is the ABS plug here. I've just unplugged it on both sides. So that's that. We've also pulled the rear brake calipers off and we've just hung them up to the brake line. That will stay in the car and all this will drop down. So we'll go back up now and continue pulling it apart. These are the rose joints in here. Rose joints, heim joints, spherical joints. A lot of people call them different things. But yeah, these are the ones that we need to replace amongst other things. We'll keep cracking into it. Tail shaft is there. Keep going. Right, yeah, so we're back under the car now. We've just taken that exhaust hanger off, which goes to the K-frame to the back of the muffler. Jason's working on undoing the handbrake cables. So you just basically clip that out of that mount. It clips in there. There's another clip retaining the handbrake cable to this mount here. So you remove that clip and then we just slide the handbrake cable off the handbrake lever. We'll do that both sides. We then need to undo the blade bush nuts where they go to the floor. So these two on either side. You can either undo them from here or you can undo these three from here. But because we need to replace these bushes, we'll take that whole thing out. On both sides, this arm here, I normally remove the nut and just loosen this bolt and then I just swing it out of the way. So that's that. Yeah, so we'll go through and get all that done. I've pulled the ABS sensor wiring through the floor. And once we get all of that done, we'll check back in. As for new parts, we are going Nolothane everything. So just because these are the Nolothane blade bush kits. This is again all from Petters. We've got some new rear sway bar links as well. These are an upgraded heavy duty one. We'll start a nut for that other side. This is bump stops. These are spherical rose joints or heim joints, which we've got to do those on both sides. Then we've got our front diff push kit and the main mount for the rear of the diff. So that's everything that's going to be going into the back of this thing. Plus there's also the cinder bearing and the tail shaft donut, which we'll get onto that later. So we'll keep cracking into all of this stuff. Fast forward about 6 minutes and I think we're there. Did all of that stuff that I spoke to you guys about. So they're off. Those nuts up there are off on both sides. These bars are swung out of the way, both sides. Cables are out of the floor, both sides. We actually ended up doing the lower shock mounts. I told you a lie by doing the top ones. Better to do the bottom ones because when the K-frame's out of the car, then the shocks are out of the way. So that's that. One thing I didn't mention to you, this is your central handbrake adjuster. There is an adjuster inside each rear wheel, which is that. But this is your central adjuster. Sometimes you do need to back that off to get these handbrake cables off the levers. So if you're battling with it, just back that off, hold it up here with the shifter, and then there's a 10mm nut up here. So all that's basically left now is the main bolts that hold the K-frame in, and there is 7 of them. So you have one bolt here, then you have one nut here, just in front of the spring, and then you have another nut behind the spring, same on the other side, which is 6. And then you've got one bolt going up through the side of the upper diff mount up here as well. So you take all those 7 out, transmission jack under the car. I actually screw a couple of bits of wood to the transmission jack. This is a bit of a hack that I use and it fits perfectly sort of across here and on this lip here. Anyway, so yeah, we'll get the K-frame out the car. So we're all there. We've just got one nut each side still to undo. One thing I didn't mention before, which I do recommend doing, but you don't have to. I normally just put a bit of paint on the back tabs here. These holes are basically for aligning the K-frame to the actual chassis rails of the car. You can see they don't line up exactly, So I normally just do that paint mark to line up those holes about in the same spot again, but you can also just go off the witness marks with the nuts and stuff where as well. So pop those last 2 nuts out and we'll drop the K-frame down. As we're dropping the K-frame down though, we need to unfeed these handbrake cables out through the K-frame as well. And the other thing I didn't mention as well is there is a diff breather hose up here as well, which I've just undone, which just goes on the top of the diff. Out. Voila, this thing is out of the car. So all in all, they're not too bad to do. We've just sort of given it a bit of a wipe down with a brush and blown out all of our mess. So yeah, you can see these are the blade bushes, which are torn. You can see our diff bush is a bit better now as well. So here's the front one, your other one, and then the main one on the back there. And then our rose joints in here. So I guess we'll get started with, what are you thinking?
Blade bushes.
Blade bushes, all right. We'll start with blade bushes and then we'll move on to rose joints and then we'll get on to the diff bushes. The blade arms out of the car, obviously just the 3 bolts that hold it to the knuckle, and then the ABS wiring clips to it, so you've got to undo that as well. So yes, as I said, these are our blade bushes. They are cracked and floppy. They're floppy from the factory, but they're even more floppy now. Got the other one just chilling wherever Jason put it, down there. So we'll start with this side. Easiest way to get these out is Sawzall is your best friend. Even when doing the diff bushes, Sawzall is your best friend as well. So I basically cut the sides out so the rest of the bush comes out, and then we cut the collar. You can see that there's a lip on the collar. So cut the collar and then we knock it through that way. That bit out, boom, like that. So put a couple of cuts in it. If you lightly scratch or lightly cut this housing, do not panic, it's not the end of the world. So now I'm gonna get a wire brush on a drill attachment and clean this out in here. Then we can go about fitting our new ones. There are many ways you can press these in. I just do them in a vise. It goes in and it's fine. So basically there is a specific way that this bush goes in. There is a recess on one side of the bush and not the other. This collar sits in that recess and that needs to go to the outside of the car. If you press these in the wrong way, they are a mongrel to get back out. So basically that goes in like that, and we're just gonna crush that up on the vise. Normally they go in, and then that will just slide through with a bit of lube on it. But yeah, this one's done. It's all pressed in, got the arm in, and I've just loosely put the bolts on. We'll wait for the thing to be in the car before we tighten them up and have this sort of where it needs to go. And Jason's working on cutting the other one out. We've got both those blade bushes in and the arms are loosely installed. Cables are back through. Next we're going to move on to these rose joints. So we'll get these bolts out of both sides and I'll grab the tool out that we need to do these and we'll show you how to get them done. Got the bolt out and that arm is flicked up, just sort of hanging there. Heim joint, rose joint, whatever you want to call it, is in here. Super loose and floppy. That one is a lot noisier than this one. You do need a G-clamp tool to get these out. So you basically set it up and cup it over this and push it out. And then you do the same scenario for putting the new one in. Right, yeah, so we've got it out. Once you've got the old one out, we can grab our new one. This rubber cap does get installed on there. This is when you get the Petters ones anyway. With the new ones, you'll notice that one shoulder is flat and one shoulder is tapered. The shoulder that is flat is the side that you remove this rubber from. And when you go to install it, you're basically going to be pressing on that lip to get it through. So the tapered side goes through first, and then you press on that lip. Well, actually it goes through that way. You press on the sharper corner to get this thing in where it needs to be, and then you put the rubber bird on. So we'll go through and do that, and we'll also do the other side. Boom, new one is in. So all we need to do now is put that rubber back on there. Then that can go back through the arm, tighten it up. Jason's already starting to pull the other side apart. Rightio guys, rose joints are done. So blade bushes and rose joints are done. Now we are moving on to the, let's move on to the bump stops. These are super simple. They just pull off. There's not much left of these ones. And then there's just a little dot up in there that I normally just put a little bit of grease on, and then the new bump stop just slides on. New bump stop looks like this. So they're a bit of a better one than the factory ones. So that's nice and easy. Boom, just like that, they're both on. Nice and simple. Now we'll move on to the main event, which is the actual diff bushes. Lol. So these are all 21mm bolts. So we'll go about getting all of those bolts undone. Then we need to undo the 3 bolts on the ears. So there's one there, and one down from underneath, which you need a long extension through the side. You got to move those ears sort of out and in a little bit to get the new bushes in. So we'll go through and get all those diff mounts out and get these ears loosened off. Sweet, so we've got all those bolts out. These are nice and floppy and broken. Back one is torn through as well. So torn there, torn there. They're stuffed. We know they're stuffed because of the way they are, and we're doing them. We've also got these ears unbolted as well. They were both missing a bolt on either side, so we're going to have to try and find something to replace it with. So now it's sort of like a bit of a rinse and repeat of doing these guys. We cut the sides out with the Sawzall, then we cut through the perimeter and then knock the bush out. These are a bit easier though because the outside perimeter is nylon, so it gets cut through really easy. Someone's keen. All right, mate, let's get into it. Rightio, got all of the bushes cut out. So the rear one and both the fronts, same story. Get the wire wheel, clean up inside. Jason's giving it a thorough lubing in the hole. And so, yeah, that's it. The 2 front bushes are these guys. So one goes in from the back, one goes in from the front. Super simple that they just push in by hand. And then you've got a ferrule that goes through the middle of it all. And the rear one already has the ferrule bonded to it. So that literally just pushes into the back nice and easy. So we'll get all the bushes in and get the diff bolted back in. Rightio guys, diff bushes are officially done. Ears are tightened up. We found a couple of bolts that we're missing for those missing ones. So they're in, and then we've got the main one at the back is in as well. Boom, Jason's just doing sway bar links at the moment because the rubbers on these ones are a bit cracked and they're not great. Of course, we're going Petters replacement. Super easy to change, just 1 nut on the top and 1 bolt on the bottom. So once those sway bar links go in, they are an upgraded link as well. They're thicker. This whole rear end is ready to go back in the car, so that's good. So now we're just going to work on the tail shaft. Obviously, we've got to change this donut. So here is the new one there. And then we've got to do the center bearing because this one is very much Bluetooth. There are 2 center bearings that they run depending on the center hole diameter. This is the more common one. I normally order both just in case. Yes, they are normally that one, but you know, if you don't order both and have them both here, for sure it'll be that one. So I always just get both in, and then whichever one it isn't, I send back. So first thing, we'll just go through and change this donut, which is super simple to do. It's just the 3 bolts, obviously. And then we'll do the center bearing. To do the center bearing, you need to get this nut off. I have a cut down spanner that I use for that, which is this one here. So it's cut thinner because when they're the normal thickness, they don't fit. If you've ever had to loosen this nut on the center of the tail shaft, you'll know how tight they are. They are really stupidly tight. I normally end up having to lock this in the vise. I sit that on there with a big bit of exhaust pipe on the end of this, stand on the bench, and I have to crack it that way. But we'll see how we go. This does look like it's been apart before. So let's just get into it. It's getting late, so we need to get this stuff done. New donuts on. Got that nut cracked as well, starting to wind it off. It'll get to a point where it bottoms out on the uni. When it does that, you need to get a pry bar in here and sort of start prying it off because it has got a tight fit in here. and you can sort of pry that back so the nut sits back down, and then you can continue undoing the nut and then sort of take it off. Right here we have the shaft in 2 halves now, so that's all good. Now all I normally do is I just get a little something like a chisel or something on this edge in here, and I just sort of knock this off. It is a press fit, but it's not that tight. So I knock the old one off, and then the same thing of putting it on, knock it on the inner edge of the race to install the new one. Make sure that this goes on the right way, which is that way. Sweet, old one is off. Very good. This one is ready to go on. I normally put a tiny little bit of grease on here, and also a tiny little bit of grease on the spline, and then I just put a dot of medium strength Loctite on that thread too. Let's get it all back together. And we're all done. So new center bearing is on. Most center bearings come with a new nut as well, so we've used the new nut. This thing also had a greasable uni in it, so it's been replaced at some point, so we've greased up that uni as well. All that's left now is to throw everything back together. Just a complete reverse of what we've done. Well, it's night time, but we are all done. So, donuts in, center bearing, obviously, diff bushes, blade bushes, rose joints, bum stops, sway bar links. All done and dusted. All that's left is to take the thing for a road test. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video on how to do everything on these things. If you want to see more content like this, please remember to like and subscribe. Until I see you in the next video, be good to yourselves and each other.